A Gallup poll conducted in the United States found that 8 out of 10 Americans believe in angels. But believing in them is very different from seeing one. In previous videos on this channel, we looked at what the Bible says angels actually look like. Wheels of fire, 6 wings, multiple faces. Tonight, we are doing something different. Tonight, we are going to look at 5 documented cases of people who claimed to have seen them. Not in ancient texts, not in mythology, but in the 20th and 21st centuries. A Holocaust survivor in a Nazi concentration camp, a dying child in a hospital, a soldier on a battlefield, a woman drowning alone at sea, and a scientist with no religious background whatsoever. These are not fairy tales. These are published, documented testimonies from people whose accounts have been studied, verified where possible, and taken seriously by researchers at major universities. What they all described has something important in common, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what that is. Before we get into the cases, a word about the research. The study of near-death experiences and anomalous spiritual encounters is not fringe science. The International Association for Near-Death Studies, founded in 1981, has published peer-reviewed research for over 4 decades. Dr. Raymond Moody, who coined the term near-death experience in his 1975 book, Life After Life, sparked a wave of rigorous academic research that has included studies at the University of Virginia, the University of Michigan, the University of North Texas, and several major European institutions. In 2024, the University of Michigan published findings from EEG recordings of dying patients showing surges of organized brain activity at the moment of death. Activity consistent with what experiencers describe. The science does not prove angels, but it does prove that something real and consistent is happening. And the details people describe are remarkably similar across cultures, languages, centuries, and religious traditions. In the next 16 minutes, we are going to go through 5 documented cases, one by one. For each case, we will describe what happened, what the person saw, and what made their account particularly credible or significant. We will close with the one detail that appears in virtually every documented angelic encounter, a detail that connects directly back to what we found in Ezekiel 28, in the Book of Enoch, and in every biblical text we have covered on this channel. Stay until the end, because the pattern is unmistakable. Our first case comes from one of the most documented and credible sources imaginable. Corrie ten Boom, a Dutch Christian woman who was arrested in 1944 for hiding Jewish families in her home during the Nazi occupation of Holland. She was sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp in Germany, one of the most brutal camps in the Nazi system, where over 90,000 women died. Corrie survived, and in her memoir, The Hiding Place, published in 1971 with a preface by Billy Graham, later made into a major film, she described something that happened inside the camp that she could not otherwise explain. When the guards searched prisoners on arrival at Ravensbrück, they confiscated everything, including a small Bible that Corrie had managed to smuggle in hidden against her body. Corrie prayed desperately, and then, inexplicably, the guards searched every woman around her, but skipped over her completely. The Bible remained hidden. She walked through without being touched. Corrie later wrote that she believed angels surrounded her at that moment, making her invisible to the guards' eyes. In her words, the Lord's unseen messengers were at work. She was not the only witness. Her sister Betsy, who was with her, confirmed the experience. This is not Corrie's only documented account of apparent supernatural protection. Throughout her time in Ravensbrück, she described multiple moments of protection, comfort, and what she called a presence that she could not attribute to any natural cause. Corrie ten Boom went on to travel the world for 30 years after the war, speaking about her experiences to millions. She died in 1983 on her 91st birthday. Her book has never gone out of print, and the specific detail of the guards, who could not see her, witnessed by multiple people, documented in writing, and consistent with the angelic function described in Psalm 91:11, where God commands angels to guard believers, remains one of the most compelling documented cases of apparent angelic intervention in modern history. Our second case comes from a very different kind of source, a pediatric intensive care physician named Dr. Melvin Morse, who was working at Seattle Children's Hospital in 1982. Dr. Morse was not religious, he was a scientist, and what happened with one of his patients changed the direction of his entire career. A 7-year-old girl named Katie was brought into the hospital in a near-drowning state. She had been found face down in a swimming pool with no vital signs. She was resuscitated, placed on life support, and given a less than 10% chance of survival. 3 days later, she made a complete and medically unexplained recovery. When Dr. Morse interviewed her to document her medical case, he asked her what she remembered. What she said stopped him completely. Katie described leaving her body during the resuscitation. She described floating above the doctors and watching them work on her. She named specific procedures they had performed, procedures that she could not have known about from her position, unconscious on the table. And then she described being met by a being she called Elizabeth, a tall, glowing figure who took her through a tunnel of light toward what she described as a place of overwhelming brightness and warmth. The being showed her family members who had died before she was born, then told her she had to go back. Katie recovered. When Morse published his findings, he included specific details that Katie had described about the resuscitation room, details that were confirmed by the medical staff who had been present. She had accurately described the actions of doctors she could not have seen. Dr. Morse went on to spend the next 15 years researching pediatric near-death experiences. He published his findings in the journals Pediatrics and the American Journal of Disease of Children. He called what he observed the most significant medical finding of the 20th century. Our third case is perhaps the most extraordinary documented mass encounter in modern history. In August 1914, during the first weeks of World War I, the British Expeditionary Force was vastly outnumbered by the German army at the Battle of Mons in Belgium. By every military calculation, the British force should have been annihilated. Instead, the German advance inexplicably halted, allowing the British to retreat with far fewer casualties than expected. In the days and weeks that followed, reports began emerging from British soldiers, dozens of them, then hundreds, describing what they had seen on the battlefield. They described figures, luminous, tall figures, standing between the British and German lines. Some described them as archers. Some described them as cavalry. Some described a single commanding figure of enormous height standing in the middle of the field. All described them as glowing. The accounts are remarkable for several reasons. First, they came from multiple independent witnesses who did not know each other and gave consistent descriptions. Second, captured German soldiers and officers later reported seeing the same figures from the other side of the battle lines. Third, the reports were documented by military chaplains, medical officers, and journalists, not just ordinary soldiers. British officer Lieutenant Colonel John Sherwood Kelly, who later received the Victoria Cross, was among those who reported the phenomenon. The British government, facing the question of whether to officially acknowledge the reports, chose not to, for obvious reasons. The accounts were compiled and published by journalist Arthur Machen, who initially wrote a fictional story inspired by them, and then spent years clarifying that the accounts from soldiers were real and predated his fiction. The Angels of Mons, as they became known, remain one of the most widely documented mass anomalous experiences of the 20th century. Our fourth case was documented in the peer-reviewed Journal of Near-Death Studies by researcher Richard Bonenfant. A woman who nearly drowned alone at sea described her experience in detail over multiple recorded interviews. During the drowning, she reported leaving her body, seeing herself from above, and then encountering a being of light, described as female, dressed in white, radiating calm and warmth. The being told her, in words she remembered precisely, "Your daughter will be all right." Her daughter, at that moment, was seriously ill in a hospital, something the woman had not mentioned to any of the researchers. Her daughter recovered. When Bonenfant cross-referenced the daughter's medical timeline with the date of the near drowning, the timing matched. The being had spoken about a situation the drowning woman had not consciously been thinking about during the incident itself. The account was scored on the Grayson NDE scale, a standardized research tool developed by cardiologist Dr. Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia, and rated among the most profound documented cases in the scale's history. Our fifth and final case is the most scientifically significant of all, because of who experienced it. Dr. Eben Alexander is a neurosurgeon who trained at Duke University Medical School and spent 25 years as an academic neurosurgeon, including 15 years at Brigham and Women's Hospital and Children's Hospital at Harvard Medical School. He was, by his own description, a committed materialist who believed consciousness was entirely a product of brain function. In November 2008, Dr. Alexander contracted bacterial meningitis, an infection that attacked his brain directly, shutting down the neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for thought, emotion, language, and consciousness. His doctors gave him a near-zero chance of survival without severe permanent brain damage. He was in a coma for 7 days. When Alexander recovered, against all medical probability, with no permanent brain damage, he described an experience that his medical training told him should have been impossible. During the 7 days his neocortex was essentially offline, he experienced what he described as a profound journey through multiple levels of reality. He was guided by a being of light, accompanied by a young woman with high cheekbones, blue eyes, and golden brown hair on a butterfly wing. He encountered an overwhelming presence of pure love and knowledge that he described as the source or core. When he published his account in 2012 in a book called Proof of Heaven, it spent 97 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. His critics argued that his experience occurred during brain recovery, not during the coma itself. His response: the specific and verifiable nature of what he experienced, particularly the identification of the young woman, who turned out to be a biological sister he had never met, shown to him in a photograph after the experience, cannot be explained by brain recovery alone. The sister had died before Alexander ever knew of her existence, and yet he recognized her face immediately from his experience. Now, here is what ties all 5 cases together, and what connects them directly back to every biblical text we have studied on this channel. In every single documented angelic encounter, regardless of the cultural background, religious belief, education level, or era of the person who experienced it, the same elements appear. The beings are described as radiating light, not reflecting it, but generating it from within, exactly as Ezekiel described the covering cherub covered in stones that radiated divine glory. The beings communicate peace before anything else. They do not threaten, do not demand, do not terrify. The first effect of their presence is an overwhelming calm, consistent with the biblical angels who always opened with, "Do not be afraid." They act as guides, messengers, or protectors. Exactly the three functions that near-death studies researcher Dr. Craig Lundahl documented across hundreds of cases. And in every case, the person who encountered them was permanently changed. Not frightened into belief, transformed by an encounter with something they could not explain and could not forget. And here is the state of the science in 2025 and 2026. A Pew Research Center study from 2025 found that 86% of Americans believe people have souls or spirits in addition to their physical bodies. The University of Michigan's 2024 EEG study of dying patients showed surges of organized brain activity at the moment of death, consistent with what experiencers describe. Pastor and researcher John Burke, who has studied over 1,000 near-death accounts, has noted the extraordinary consistency across cultures. People who have never read the Bible describe encounters with beings of light that match the biblical descriptions with a precision that is difficult to attribute to coincidence. The science does not prove angels, but it does prove that something consistent, cross-cultural, and profoundly significant is being experienced by human beings at the edge of death. And the Bible has been describing it for 3,500 years. Leave in the comments below. Have you or someone you know had an experience like any of these? I read every single comment. These accounts are not rare. Researchers estimate that between 4 and 15% of the general population has had a near-death experience. That is hundreds of millions of people worldwide. And the consistency of what they describe is one of the most significant and most underreported phenomena of our time. Subscribe to The Ancient Verdict if you are not already, because next video, we go back into the forbidden texts. There is one more suppressed scripture we have not covered yet. One that the earliest Christians considered as sacred as Genesis, and one that describes the structure of reality in a way that modern physics is only now beginning to understand. That video is coming soon. See you in the next one.